RWBY, Volume 1, Episode 8, Players and Pieces. What happens? The episode starts out explaining RWBY's previous airtime by showing how she and Weiss hitched a ride on Nevermore. She and Jean land relatively safely while Ren and Nora make their dramatic entrance to the location and grab the gold rook piece. Ying has a useless freakout as Jean helps Weiss avoid some fall damage and the Deathstalker tosses Pyrrha into the mix. RWBY tries to fight off the Deathstalker to no avail, needing to get saved by Weiss. The girls quickly reconcile and the group heads off with more relics in hand. However, avoiding the monsters becomes impossible as they near the cliffs and the kids begin to fight. After some shuffling, the group gets divided into two teams. Jean, Nora, Pyrrha, and Ren defeat the Deathstalker, and RWBY, Weiss, Blake, and Ying defeat the Nevermore with a bit more flair. Now safe, we transition to the kids being put into their respective groups, Juniper and RWBY. As most of the kids celebrate, we then cut to Tortrix scheming with the White Fang to close out the episode. Well, it's nice to know how RWBY got in the air. She and Weiss were on a Nevermore, but unfortunately that just brings up more questions. How did they get on the Nevermore? Why did Weiss agree to this idea in the first place? Though, let's be real, those questions don't really matter. This is supposed to be funny, and it is. We don't need every element explained to us all the time, despite how curious that may leave the audience. I'm embarrassed to admit that I may be the only person on Earth who didn't notice Blake's bow twitching here, but it is a cute little hint at her true nature. I'm finding it pretty difficult to consider these Grimm a real threat if so many kids are able to casually hitch a ride on them. To be fair, the Grimm aren't treated like this cataclysmic superbad, "oh no, we're all gonna die" threat like how they are in later volumes. While they are still dangerous to a degree, the show doesn't try to pretend that the kids are in any real peril when fighting the monsters. The Grimm act as an excuse for the kids to get to fight stuff, and the show prioritizes that. Fights exemplify cool set pieces and fun combat choreography and interesting movesets, rather than use them to perpetuate a flimsy level of tension like how we see so often nowadays in the show. Why doesn't Nora's Ursa powder away upon death? Aren't they supposed to, like, turn to mist? Maybe it's just playing dead.
Nora!
I love Monty's performance for that.
I can't take it anymore! Could everyone just chill out for 2 seconds before something crazy happens again?
This might be the weakest moment of the adventure in the forest. Barbara gives one of her worst performances for the line, sounding super stilted and unnatural for it, which makes sense because it's a clunky line anyway. And as a joke, it just does not land. There's no punchline. The idea of everything suddenly cranking up to 11 as the cast of kids gets thrown into the fray in gradually more and more wacky ways is fun, but having Ying just get mad and yell as the culmination of the joke just does not work. It sounds like this was probably funnier while writing the script than in execution. Luckily, the jokes more often than not do work, and even in this episode we get to see what happens when we totally land one.
Great, the gang's all here. Now we could die together.
Which, by the way, is such a funny line that I still quote it regularly, even 6 years after this episode first aired.
I said jump.
She's gonna fall.
She'll be fine.
She's falling.
Blake and Ren should hang out more. Their combined apathy is a great and funny addition to the group of many people who yell a lot. No hit in this show has ever sounded more devastating than Weiss landing on Jean. So, I like this part, but let's take a second to talk about its garbage composition. Pyrrha is running from left to right here, and is then thrown into frame from the same direction after that. That tells us the Deathstalker is out of camera, screen left. But then RWBY runs towards camera to attack it, which means the Deathstalker, like, teleports 90 degrees in a semicircle to be in front of the kids. Now, that's bad, but then it gets worse with the fact that the Grimm is now facing the kids from the right side of the screen. This is a problem because it lacks continuity. This feels like a new encounter from the one Pyrrha was involved in. Now, obviously we all know it's the same Deathstalker, but it does present the fight as new in your mind by flipping what direction it's coming from. Luckily, Roosterteeth avoid doing this in the future, so I think it's safe to say they learned to keep placement more consistent. RWBY ran far as fuck to attack the Deathstalker. Use your sniper rifle, girl! It's pretty dumb that Ying just pretends that the Nevermore feathers are keeping her from helping RWBY. Like, she just sits down and then refuses to go around them. Get up, what are you doing? That being said, I do like that it forces Weiss to take action. It shows that, while they may not get along very well right now, Weiss isn't heartless and is still willing to help when needed. I also really like what she says to RWBY here. She calls RWBY childish, dim-witted, and hyperactive. And let's be honest, she's not really wrong. RWBY has spent her time with Weiss so far by running around aimlessly, arguing, and jumping into dangerous situations. Weiss isn't just insulting RWBY, she's listing RWBY's problems. Problems we get to see RWBY develop out of later. And she does this while also taking the high road and admitting her own issue of being hard to deal with, something we get to see her work on.
But if we're going to do this, we're going to have to do this together.
And there we have it, the moment RWBY makes her first step of development. Like I said previously, I feel this topic could have been explored a bit more, but I do still really like this interaction between the girls. RWBY couldn't handle the Deathstalker on her own and needed Weiss's help. RWBY learns that while she may not like it, she is going to have to learn how to work with others if she wants to succeed. Very well done. Gold star. Hey, do you want to see the worst animation scene in RWBY? It's Yang's wobbly legs just flapping around as she awkwardly pretends to hug RWBY. Why do they pause for 2 seconds here? Fucking, what are you doing back there?
She's right. Our mission is to grab an artifact and make it back to the cliffs.
I thought we were calling them relics. Where did this artifact terminology come from? You'd think RWBY would have asked Yang which one she grabbed.
Hey sis, tell me which piece you got. I'll pick the same and maybe that means we'll be on the same team.
It makes you wonder what prompted RWBY and Jean to select the pieces they did grab. Did they just randomly grab one? Did Jean deliberately pick the one next to RWBY, thinking that may put them on the same team? Was it destiny? This is really cute and uplifting background music. This is a really fun fight. I like how having 2 Grimm allows for each team to have a moment to shine. It's also fun that this fight puts everyone's weapons on display. When the show was first airing, we would anxiously await any moment that included the kids using their weapons. Nora using her rocket launcher and hammer for the first time was exciting, because the variety in weapons meant that we got to see a fun new fighting style. I wish that was something RT would work on for upcoming volumes. Different weapons should feel different in combat. I love how Nora marches! One of my least important nitpicks of new volumes is that everyone runs the same now. I liked the variety we see here. I like that the teams aren't set in stone from the start. Blake and Weiss help Nora and Ren with the Deathstalker. When the Nevermore separates the bridge, we've got RWBY, Weiss, Yang, Nora, and Jean on one side, and Pyrrha, Ren, and Blake on the other. The kids don't arbitrarily decide to get in their specific teams for this fight. Jean has Nora get them to the other side to help with the Deathstalker, not just to reunite with their partners. And Blake sticks around until she gets knocked off the bridge. It's cool that the kids are prioritizing defeating the enemy over sticking with your team, and even cooler that Roosterteeth had them misaligned in the first place. If RWBY and Juniper had been conveniently separated as the bridge was destroyed, it'd feel less organic. I also like that none of the kids are doing particularly well until they start working together. A surprisingly rare occurrence for a show based around teams. This piano kicking in when we focus on Blake is great. And I wish the show had leitmotifs. It would help enhance the storytelling.
It's tougher than it looks.
I love that Blake reports to Yang, not RWBY. We all know RWBY is going to become the team leader, but Blake doesn't know her yet. At best, Blake currently identifies her yet-to-be team members as the bitchy Schnee and the girl with the red hood who is sisters with my partner. Of course she'd go to Yang here. She's the only one in the group Blake knows. Good characterization. I also like how this gives us a moment to see why Yang isn't made the team leader. Yang's plan is we'll just hit it harder.
We hit it harder.
Weiss says it best.
None of this is working.
Even after they do their full shootout, Yang insists on continuing her strategy of keep hitting it head on. Yang clearly excels when she can follow someone's orders, rather than come up with a plan herself. Look how fun this set piece is! The girls have to jump around and find solid footing. They use the pillars constantly throughout the fight. I love how they actually use the environment here. In recent volumes, the kids are usually stuck fighting in big open spaces or empty rooms, and I wish they'd allow the group to have some exciting terrain to play with every once in a while.
I have a plan. Cover me!
Wait, no, you have to tell her the plan! This is a good time to cut to Juniper's fight. It's smartest to end the fight with the protagonist, so we have to jump to the B team before RWBY enacts her untold plan. And this is a good time because RWBY is currently doing something we don't need to watch, getting in position for and telling the others about her strategy. Good flow of action. This animation of Nora propelling herself up on Pyrrha's shield is amazing. Great sense of weight and movement. I could gush about how good this looks all day. More great animation with the giant slingshot. The sound of Weiss's glyph changing, the way the camera shakes a little, and all the debris and rose petals left behind sell the amount of force used so well. And I love that RWBY continually shoots herself forward as she flies to the Nevermore. 1,000,000 out of 10. This shows us the scale of the Nevermore and location really well. Look at these fucking nobodies. Get off the stage, we don't care about you.
Led by Jean Arc.
Huh?
Why is Jean surprised? Shouldn't they know that the team leader has their initial first in the team? I also want to take a second to talk about Jean being made team leader. So, it actually makes some sense, despite Pierre being blatantly a better huntress than him. Jean isn't simply the strategist during this adventure in the forest. He actually leads his team. He gives them directions. He insists on helping despite his lack of ability. Pyrrha by all means could have also been made team leader and it would have also worked, but they actually did a good job of displaying Jean's ability to lead during this episode. Nice work. Bad looking Yang hugs part 2. They've gotten a lot better at animating hugs, so I don't mind pointing out how unconvincing these look here. Leanne looks like credit cards, and that had confused me for the longest time. Ending with the machinations of our only established villain is a good way to let the audience know that there's still a bigger plot happening in the background. A fun conclusion to what feels like the show's pilot episodes. And so, that was Players and Pieces. I think it should be obvious that I really liked this episode. I spent like half of this review just listing off the things I thought were cool, because a lot of cool things happen. The characters are all fully established by now, which means we get to see them start to develop and interact without being bogged down with any setup or exposition. The episode's really funny despite the ultimately dangerous situation the kids find themselves in, and we get our first real step of growth from the cast with Ruby learning that she needs to work with others to succeed. We've got all the makings of a great episode, and that's not even including the fight. RT pulled out all the stops to bring us one of the most bombastic and memorable fights of the show. Characters get to work together while showing off their fighting styles and abilities, giving the audience a string of exciting moments one after another. There's not a dull second during the action sequence, as the pace of the episode keeps that high energy from the moment Red Like Roses Part 2 kicks in. This episode can easily be described in one word. Fun. The fight is fun. The girl's development is fun. The interaction between the kids is fun. The story progression is fun. It's just a good time, as Rooster Teeth gives us 13 minutes of some of the best pacing and writing of the series. This is the episode that shows that this project is more than just 3D anime girls going to generic fight school. It has that unexplainable spark of life that shows all the passion that went into the series. Even though the end product has some animation weirdness and less than amazing line reads, it's clear that the people working on the show cared. It's obvious that the people who made this episode wanted to tell a story and bring this world to life, from the animators to the choreographers to the actors to the writers, and all those pieces come together to make one of the best episodes of the series.
Well, this is a fine pickle. Oh, death approaches. Oh god. Death approaches, better skedaddle. This is a fine mess of turnips we've gotten ourselves into.